Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Mohit Jain. I lead on finance for the group. A number of questions have come in around finance and how we're going to finance the school. So, as inspiring as all the other presentations have been this evening, I have to say sorry to them because this is just going to blow you away. There's four key stages to financing sort of the free school opening, and I'd characterise those as being sort of the application phase, which is currently where we're at, the pre-opening phase, and then once we're opening, there's kind of what I would call sort of an early stage opening and then sort of an ongoing viability stage. So if I kind of quickly just wrap up where the funding comes from in all of those stages, hopefully I can be done quite quickly and briefly, and you'll hopefully have enough information, and if you want any more, you can come and talk to me afterwards. So in the pre-opening phase, which is where we're at, we've been quite lucky. We are one of 80 free school groups who've gone through an application process to be supported by the New Schools Network, who are an independent charity working at setting up new schools. They work with what they characterise as high potential schools, their word, not ours. Obviously, we're very proud to be called that rather than being a no-hoper. And sort of in return for them cracking the whip behind us and making sure we do our application correctly and rigorously and on time, they give us £5,000 of kind of pre-opening money sort of to pay for events like these, to pay for some of the surveys and things which David's going to talk about in a little while, and just kind of really gather information and momentum behind us. When we're successful and have got through the Department of Education application phase, we then enter what's called the pre-opening phase. In that stage, we get a £300,000 grant from the Department of Education, administered through one of their subdivisions called the Education Funding Agency, and that's really to pay for how do we get the school open. So that will be paying for project managers, recruitment of head teachers, recruitment of school business managers, and any other costs that we think we need to do to get the school on the ground and open and running. So it will be lawyers' costs to set up school leases and review things like that. The actual opening of the school, or the purchase of the school, or the signing of a long-term lease will all be paid for by the Education Funding Agency out of central government funds. So none of that money comes from the local council, so we're not taking money away from local schools, we're not taking money away from other local services. All of that money comes direct from central government. They've got value for money criteria as to the type of schools that will open. So schools who've applied saying there's a old stately house which we would like to use, thank you, but no thank you, we can't fund that. Schools who've applied saying, you know, we're in Southwark, we'd like a floor in the Shard, lovely idea, but no, we can't fund that. You know, kind of rebase your ideas. You know, I think what they've now started saying is, you know, they don't fund iconic projects. So, you know, a school is a school. Once we open, our funds will be funded on a per pupil basis, the same as any other school in the borough. So each borough has a funding formula which says a pupil will get funded at this rate, so it's typically between £6,000 and £8,000 for a secondary school, and if you've got free school meals or SEN requirements, there's a sort of a top-up premium you get to that. So we get that exact same formula as would Elthorne, as would Acton High, as would Drayton Manor in this borough. So we don't get any preferential treatment over mainstream or community schools. And sort of what I call an early opening is, you know, the department recognised that obviously as a new school you've got certain diseconomies of scale while you build up your school numbers. So in our first year we're hoping to have 120 people, so we'd have to pay for a school business manager and a head teacher, and that you only spread that cost across 120 pupils, or the income you get from that 120 pupils, whereas 5 years later or 6 years later when we're up to the 840 full cohort, obviously you're spreading that same cost over a much greater base. So they give you what's called an opening grant, which diminishes year by year as your pupil numbers build up. And then what the Department of Education look for in our application, there's about a 20-page section on finance, and what they're really looking for in that is the school financially viable and sustainable? So not only does the school have a strong education vision and ethos, but does the school work? Do the numbers stack up? So, you know, from the department's point of view, it's all about value for money and does it all work? So that's kind of a brief synopsis on finance. I hope you go away feeling inspired and take that with you to your school tomorrow. Now I'm going to hand over to David, who's going to talk a little bit about next steps and community engagement.